feeling a little bombarded with all the takes out there these days.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to masculinity relationship.
Yeah.
Like the future of society.
Right.
I mean, it can be a lot to process.
It really can.
So today we're going deep on a book that's generating some serious buzz. It's called The Patriarch's Dilemma.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
We're going to try to, sift through everything and really pull out the most thought-provoking stuff.
Okay.
So you can walk away with a solid grasp of, what the author's arguing and what it all means.
Sounds good.
This book tackles some pretty sensitive topics head on.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, it challenges a lot of those mainstream narratives we hear about gender roles and feminism
Right.
and the future of relationships.
Absolutely.
And because of that, we really need to, approach it with a critical eye.
Yeah, I think that's key with anything like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're here to guide you through the author's perspective.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's up to you to form your own conclusion.
Right.
Think of us as your companions on this little intellectual journey.
I like that.
So what's the big idea here? The author argues that traditional masculinity is under attack.
Right?
That there's a systematic effort to demonize it and even to emasculate men.
They're pretty upfront about that.
Yeah. And they trace this attack back to a few sources. Feminism, progressive,
Yeah.
even the education system itself.
Interesting.
And they argue that these forces are leading to a decline in men's well-being and their influence in society.
Makes sense.
So yeah, they're not pulling any punches.
No, they're not.
They're laying out a pretty stark picture, but they back it up with some real-world examples.
Oh, really?
Like they talk about how the traditional classroom setting,
Yeah.
with its emphasis on sitting still and conforming,
Right.
might actually be putting boys at a disadvantage because boys, they naturally have more energy and a need to move around.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good point.
It makes you wonder if our institutions are really serving the needs of boys.
Yeah. Does it ever?
And taking it a step further, they even argue that the rise of the incel movement is a direct result of men feeling lost and confused in a world where traditional masculinity is demonized.
That's pretty heavy.
It is. It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's unpack another big concept from the book,
Okay.
patriarchy.
Oh,
They define it as a historical social system
okay.
where men held the primary power and authority, both in families and in society as a whole.
Right. The classic definition.
Exactly. But what's interesting is they argue that this system,
Yeah.
while it certainly wasn't perfect,
Sure.
did provide a certain level of stability and order. And they contend that the decline of patriarchy has actually led to a lot of the societal issues
I see.
that we're grappling with today.
Okay, that's an interesting take.
To really bring this to life,
Yeah.
they dive into the historical origins of patriarchy. They even link it to evolutionary biology
Whoa.
and the need for survival in harsher environments.
That's fascinating.
They also talk about how religion, especially Christianity,
Yeah.
played a role in supporting and reinforcing those traditional gender roles.
Right.
And what I found particularly interesting is the connection they make
Okay.
between the decline of patriarchy and the feelings of confusion and displacement that a lot of men experience today.
Yeah, I can see that.
So they're really trying to understand the historical and societal context.
They are.
Now, here's where things get even more interesting.
All right, I'm listening.
They delve into the role of biology.
Biology.
They make a strong case that the biological differences between men and women are not just social constructs,
Okay.
but are deeply rooted in our evolution and our genetics.
So it's nature, not nurture.
Well, they're saying it's both.
Gotcha.
But they really emphasize the biological underpinnings.
I see.
And they use some pretty fascinating scientific evidence to support this claim.
Like what?
For example, they talk about how men's and women's brains are literally wired differently,
Oh, wow.
which could explain, those potential differences in cognitive ability
Yeah.
and emotional. They even get into the influence of hormones,
Okay.
particularly testosterone,
Right.
on male behavior.
Interesting.
It's like they're saying, look, we can't ignore these biological realities.
Yeah, we can't just pretend they don't exist.
And while it's important to acknowledge that environment and social factors definitely play a role,
Of course.
the book argues that ignoring these fundamental biological differences
Right.
can lead to misguided policies and a denial of men's natural strengths.
Okay. I'm starting to see where they're going with this.
Yeah, it's a pretty compelling argument so far.
It is.
And we're just getting started.
Can't wait to hear more.
Stay tuned.
All right.
So they're saying we got to look at both nature and nurture, right?
Yeah, it's a complex interplay.
Now, get this. The book even goes on to claim that the legal system
Oh, boy.
has actually become weaponized against men.
Weaponize, that's a strong word.
It is, but they make a case for it, especially in areas like family law
Right.
and sexual assault accusations.
Those are some sensitive areas.
They are, and they argue that societal biases and even just outdated laws
Yeah.
often end up working against men in these legal battles.
Interesting.
For instance, they cite statistics on how women are more likely to be awarded primary custody in divorce cases,
Oh, wow. Really?
which can leave fathers, feeling alienated from their children.
Yeah, that would be tough.
They also discuss that whole presumption of guilt
Right.
that men often face in sexual assault cases, even when there's a lack of solid evidence.
That's a serious issue.
It is. And the book really highlights how these situations can have devastating consequences for men,
Absolutely.
and how the legal system often fails to adequately protect them.
It's a tough reality for a lot of guys.
It is. It's heavy stuff, but it's important to be aware of these issues. Now, you might be wondering at this point, where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we...
Well, the book ends with a really powerful call to action for men.
Okay, I'm all ears.
And it's not about aggression or dominance.
No.
They're urging men to reclaim their masculinity by embracing their natural strengths,
Yeah.
asserting their rights,
Right.
and redefining their roles in a world that seems to be constantly shifting.
I like that.
Emphasize the importance of male mentorship,
Okay.
having those positive role models, and the need for men to connect with each other and build strong communities.
That's so important.
They even offer practical steps men can take to improve their physical and mental health.
Like what?
Things like exercise, healthy eating, stress management techniques.
All the good stuff.
It's like they're providing a roadmap for
Yeah.
men to navigate these challenging times,
Makes sense.
both individually and
I
collectively.
dig it.
Now, one of the most interesting parts of the book for me
Okay, what is it?
was its take on feminism.
Feminism. Huh. That's always a hot topic.
It is, but they don't just demonize it outright.
Oh.
They actually acknowledge its historical importance
Okay.
and the positive contributions it's made to society.
That's fair.
Like, they point to those early waves of feminism that fought for essential rights, like the right to vote and equal pay.
Yeah, absolute
Right.
rights that were crucial for women's advancement.
No doubt.
But the book argues that later waves of feminism,
Okay.
particularly third wave feminism and beyond, have taken a different turn.
Interesting.
They suggest that these later waves have focused more on dismantling traditional gender roles
Okay.
and power structure,
Right.
often at the expense of men.
I see.
And they even go so far as to say that some elements within the feminist movement
Yeah.
have become hostile towards men,
Whoa.
framing them as the enemy rather than partners in achieving equality.
That's a bold statement.
It's definitely a controversial perspective.
For sure.
And not everyone's going to agree with this assessment of feminism.
The book presents a thought-provoking
Yeah, it
is
does.
worth considering.
I agree with that.
It encourages us to look at the evolution of these movements and to really examine the impact they've had on society.
That's a valuable exercise.
It is. Now, how does this whole evolution of feminism
Yeah.
tie into what the book calls the patriarch's dilemma?
Okay, I'm curious.
Well, they argue that the decline of the traditional patriarchal system,
Right.
combined with the rise of certain feminist ideologies, has created this sense of confusion
Okay.
and uncertainty for men.
I can see that.
They're not sure what their role is anymore,
Right.
what's expected of them,
Right.
or how to navigate relationships with women in this new landscape.
It's like the rules have changed.
Exactly, the old rules don't apply anymore,
Right.
but the new rules haven't been clearly defined.
It's a recipe for
It
confusion.
is, and the book suggests that this confusion can manifest in a number of ways,
Like what?
from a decline in men's mental health
Oh, wow.
to an increase in risky behavior. They even suggest that the rise of the incel movement
Right.
is at least in part a reaction to the shifting gender dynamics and
Yeah.
a sense of feeling lost in the dating market.
That makes sense.
It's a complex issue with no easy answer.
It really is.
But the book does offer some potential ways forward for men.
Okay, like what?
They talk about the importance of men redefining their masculinity in a way that's both authentic to themselves
Right.
and compatible with the values of modern society.
That sounds like a tough balance.
It can be. But they encourage men to embrace their strength, like their natural leadership ability and their drive to provide and protect, but to do so in a way that's respectful and equitable.
That's key.
They even suggest that men can learn from some of the positive aspects of feminism.
Oh, really? Like what?
Things like the importance of emotional intelligence
Okay.
and open communication.
Interesting.
So it's not about rejecting everything that feminism stands for,
Right.
but rather about finding a balance.
Yeah.
A new way of being a man that's both strong and sensitive, assertive and compassionate.
That's a great way to put it.
It's about redefining masculinity for the 21st century.
I love that.
And that brings us to another fascinating area the book explores:
Hit me with it.
the impact of media
Media. Okay.
on men's self-perception.
Interesting.
They argue that the media often portrays men
Yeah.
in a very narrow and often negative light.
I can definitely see that.
We're talking about those stereotypical portrayals.
Right.
The bumbling dad,
Uh-huh.
the emotionally clueless husband,
Yeah.
the violent
Well, I
criminal.
mean, classic tropes.
And they point out that these portrayals can have a real impact on how men see themselves, and how society views them.
It's hard to escape those narratives.
It is. They even suggest that the media might be deliberately pushing an agenda, undermines traditional masculinity, and promotes a more feminized version of manhood.
That's a pretty big accusation.
It is a pretty strong claim.
Yeah.
But they do back it up with examples from popular culture, news media, even advertising.
Wow. So they're saying it's everywhere.
Pretty much they highlight how men are often portrayed as either incompetent or dangerous, with very little nuance in between.
It's like a black and white picture.
Exactly. And they argue that this can lead to a sense of shame and confusion for men.
Especially for young men.
Especially for young men who are still trying to figure out who they are.
Absolutely. They're still developing their sense of identity.
It's like they're constantly being told that their natural instincts and behaviors are wrong or toxic.
That's got to be tough to deal with.
It can be really damaging to a young man's self-esteem.
No doubt.
But the book doesn't just leave us with a critique of the media. They actually offer some solutions.
Oh, that's good to hear.
They advocate for a more balanced and nuanced portrayal of men in the media, one that recognizes the full spectrum of male experiences and avoids those harmful stereotypes we were just talking about.
I like that.
And they encourage men to be more discerning consumers of media, to really think critically about the messages they're being fed, and to seek out content that reflects a more positive and authentic vision of masculinity.
About being proactive.
It is. It's about taking back control instead of just passively absorbing whatever the media throws at us. Now, another really critical area that the book tackles is what they call the war on
fatherhood.
They argue that there's a systematic effort to marginalize fathers and undermine their role in the family.
Interesting.
They point to things like rising divorce rates, the increasing number of single-parent households headed by women, and the concerning trend of fathers being denied custody of their children.
That's a tough one.
It is. They even suggest that the family courts are often biased against men, making it incredibly difficult for them to maintain a meaningful relationship with their kids.
That's heartbreaking.
And this is a deeply personal and emotional issue for a lot of men.
For sure.
And the book doesn't shy away from the pain and frustration that many fathers experience.
I bet.
They share stories of men who've been alienated from their children, denied their rights, and unjustly portrayed as unfit parents.
It's tough to hear those stories.
It is. And they argue that this war on fatherhood has devastating consequences, not just for men, but for children and society as a whole.
Makes sense.
They make the point that children need both a mother and a father to really, and that denying fathers their rightful place in the family weakens the very fabric of society.
That's a powerful statement.
It is, but again, the book doesn't just present the problem, they offer solutions.
Okay, like what?
They advocate for changes to the legal system to ensure that fathers are treated fairly in custody disputes.
That's important.
They encourage men to be more proactive in their parenting, fight for their rights, and to never give up on their children.
That's good advice.
And they suggest that men need to build strong community where they can support each other and share their experiences. Because, let's face it, going through this alone can be incredibly isolating.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the demonization of masculinity, the dispossession of men, this war on fatherhood. These are some heavy topics. But the book doesn't leave us in a state of despair.
Oh, good.
It offers hope.
Hope, that's what we need.
While they paint a realistic picture of the challenges men face, they also provide a path forward. They offer solutions, strategies, and a sense of empowerment.
That's great.
They remind us that masculinity is not inherently toxic or dangerous. It's a powerful force that can be used for good.
I agree.
They urge men to reclaim the positive aspects of masculinity, to be the best versions of themselves, and to fight for a world where men are valued and respected.
We need more of that.
We do. One of the things that really stood out to me was the book's emphasis on personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility,
They're not making excuses for men's bad behavior.
No.
They're not saying that men are victims. Instead, they're saying that men need to take ownership of their lives, their choices and their actions.
That's a mature perspective.
It is. They encourage men to focus on self-improvement, to develop their character, and to strive for excellence in all areas of their lives.
I like that.
They talk about the importance of physical fitness, mental toughness, discipline, and purpose. It's about stepping up and being the men we were meant to be.
It's a powerful message.
It is, and I think it's one that a lot of men are yearning to hear.
I think so too.
The book acknowledges that this journey won't be easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt.
Life.
But they remind us that we're not alone in this struggle. There's a brotherhood of men out there who are facing similar challenges and who are committed to supporting each other.
We need to stick together.
We do. They talk about the importance of finding mentors,
Okay.
building community,
Right.
and
Yeah.
connecting with other men who share our values.
That's how we make a difference.
It's about sticking together,
Yeah.
lifting each other up, and fighting for a better future for ourselves and for future generations.
I'm all for that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the patriarch's dilemma,
Yeah.
let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Okay, shoot.
Masculinity is not inherently toxic.
Right.
It's a force for good when channeled properly.
Absolutely.
Men face unique challenges in today's world,
They do.
but they have the strength to overcome them. It's time to reclaim the positive aspects of masculinity
Yeah.
and redefine it for the 21st century.
Like that.
And finally, we need to build strong communities to support each other on this journey.
Couldn't agree more.
The Patriarch's Dilemma is a challenging book.
Well, it's thought-provoking
For sure.
and ultimately empowering.
I think that's a great way to describe it.
It asks us to confront some uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
question our assumptions, and take action to create a world where men can thrive.
I'm on board.
If you're a man who's feeling lost or confused or even angry about the state of the world,
Yeah.
this book is for you.
I think a lot of guys could benefit from reading it.
It's a call to action, a roadmap to reclaiming your masculinity,
Okay.
and a reminder that you're not alone.
That's so important.
And for those who want to delve deeper, you can find The Patriarch's Dilemma available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
All right, check it out.
This deep dive has hopefully given you a new perspective
It has.
on the challenges and opportunities facing men today.
For sure.
Remember, the future of masculinity is not set in stone.
No.
It's up to us to shape it.
Let's do it.
And that's something worth fighting for.
Absolutely.